First stage of the day. Definitely had the jitters this morning. It had just rained, so the berms were pretty muddy. It's hard to tell a whole bunch of feedback. You'd see a little bit of dirt fly, but no big clods of dust or anything like that. There's a big white barrier off the left-hand side, which you can't see in the video, and that blocked a little bit of the left to right wind, so I had more of a right wind dialed in, correcting for what I thought was a right wind, when really it should have been nearly straight up for the near, and more of a left wind at 0.2 at the far. So I had to make some corrections on it. The barricade we were shooting off were a bunch of tires. They were nowhere near as stable as I had expected. A lot more give in the sidewall and some big old gnarly tractor tires that were difficult to get a really stable position on. Alright, stage 2. Had stage 1 behind me.
Yes, sir.
I think the jitters are for the most part over.
Ready?
Scooted over a little bit to the right hand side so we were able to get a little bit more of an understanding from the wind after that first stage. So this is a pretty standard troop line, just walking out with squares all the way out off of limestone boulders. So everything's going smooth first few rounds. Third position here, make what I think is a good wind call, but then it misses high, so I started thinking, maybe I should start dropping low, correct where maybe I just got some bad velocity data, even though I checked it that morning. I think I got lucky on the remainders. All of the subsequent rounds went exactly where I aimed, probably within an inch or two of the bottom of the plate, so that high miss I should have just treated as an errant shot. Went high, you can see that one just clipped low. So don't always trust those flyers. Stage 3, this was shot off of a makeshift barricade, not your typical PRS barricade, but a mixture of square tube and round tube pipes. So moving after the first shot to the second position with a single shot. And on this third position, absolutely just smack the crap out of my scope on getting into that third position. And then miss wide left. I start thinking, oh no, I just shifted my entire point of aim. This whole rest of the stage is going to go downhill. Sure enough, miss left again. Turns out it was a wind shift. Went from being a left to right, which it had been the last two stages, to being a right to left, with no mirage to tell me any different. I had wasted that last round at E3, but finally decided, okay, well, may as well start correcting right. Finally starting to figure it out, feeling a little bit more comfortable. One of the challenges with the Punishers, you really got to hunt hard to find your target in amongst all the 70 other targets that are out there. You can see me hunting around trying to find it. This last target I absolutely shank. This was a fun stage. This was a TYL with a confirm. So you took one shot at a TYL plate and then had to shift over to the confirm at a different distance. You can see the sun's finally come out, so the mirage is finally starting to show that there is definitely a heavy right to left wind. Or heavier. You can hear it in the audio too. It's blowing pretty good. So far seem to be hitting the plates pretty square. Realize, wait a minute, I just got done shooting E3. That's the wrong target. Oh god, where am I? Where am I? Fourth target. Felt like a good trigger press, but probably just the wind picked up enough and just blew me off just right. It's okay. Shake it off. I think this last target, it's tiny. It's maybe 4 inches? Oh no, it was small. So I was stoked to just hit it. Alright, the helicopter headshots. This was a really fun stage. The prop is an old helicopter cab, minus the rotor and the tail rotor, and a piece of plywood that you can set on top and shift from one side to the other to make for 2 separate positions. And then you have some head targets that go out in a troop line fashion. So first 4 impacts go smooth, everything's tracking as it should. And I've been using for the last few matches, something that a lot of the pros I've seen do is they mark their turrets with a wet erase marker, and on this stage I completely blow past my mark for the 3rd target, and you can see it go high there. And it takes me a minute to realize that, yep, that was my mistake. Come back, and then in all the excitement, didn't even look at the wind. Not sure what happened on that last shot. Went wide, probably just wished it in.
Ready?
The Leophoto STC barricade was a sheet metal barricade made out into the letters of STC for the range. This barricade ended up having quite a bit more bounce to it than I was expecting. Looked pretty solid, but when I started to put a 26-pound rifle and a heavy fill schmedium, it had a lot more bounce than I was anticipating. And some of the positions you had to get yourself into, so here trying to wedge the rifle into an odd shape that barely had enough room for all your gear, and so it recoiled weird, and I think I blew that one off high right. And then towards the end, the wind starts to shift on me from being a right to left to a left to right. And again, it was switching between sunny to overcast, so you weren't always able to see what the mirage was doing. And unfortunately, didn't catch the wind shift soon enough. This was one of the time stages for determining tiebreakers, and there were two of them. This one you had to shoot out of the back seat of a Hummer. You could take it any position you wanted, and so I tried to sprawl out as long as I could to get a nice stable platform. This stage was definitely designed for speed, so the targets are pretty good size, but I'd been hemorrhaging points all morning, so rather than doing holdovers, which these targets are certainly big enough that if you were going for speed, you absolutely could have done holdovers pretty easily on this, but I wanted every point that I could get, so I dialed every single one of them. Definitely a left to right at this point. You can see a little bit of the mirage. And that one just barely missed off right. It gave me my win call for my 810-yard shot. Knew which part of my bracket on my dope card to run, and so unfortunately dropped that one, but was happy to come back into the close distance and win the rest. Stage 8, the impact pole position, was a series of telephone poles buried into the earth, cut at odd angles, and you had a specific target order that you needed to engage this TYL rack in: large, medium, slightly smaller medium, and then small. So you always had to make sure you had in mind that target order, because it didn't go consistently left to right and went far right, middle left, middle right, far left. And what had been a left to right on the last stage was now a right to left. Basically the story for day one, just the wind could not make up its mind on what it wanted to be, and I was slow to catch up. Overall, I shot this stage probably faster than I needed to. Had plenty of time. Probably should have just taken the time to make sure I was making really good trigger presses. But I was starting to feel rushed towards the end that I was running out of time. This is one of two stages that I wish I could have back. Up until this stage, I had been bleeding points, but I was averaging a 80% to 85% average. So okay, I can work with that. But this is an example of what happens when you get flustered and you let it get to you. Now we have a left to right wind. Again, tough wind day. Really had to be paying attention. I start getting frustrated that I'm missing and start losing track of my target order. No idea where that one went. Off into the damp berm back there. can also tell that the rifle's canted pretty good. Pretty sure I didn't have my scope level on, so level shifted, and that probably exacerbated my wind condition. And I just happened to write the target order down wrong. And so at this point I'm getting pretty upset at myself with the misses. Got an impact there, but then decided to double tap it. I was supposed to shoot the long one next, and now I'm out of sequence. I'm making bad choices, bad wind calls. You can see that one drop just off left. I realized, why am I out of rounds? Just take 2 at the last. Drop in another round from my spare holder. Miss that again into the same spot. Rough stage.
Yes.
Shooter ready?
Ready?
Spotter ready?
There's one positive takeaway from these 2 rough stages I wish I could have back. It's that I was able to shake it off, not let it get to me, and turn around and have a decent follow-up stage. So on the cattle gates, I don't know why, but I seem to enjoy those and I'm able to get relatively stable on. So these are 2 separate cattle gates. You had to use both of them, so I chose to run 4 rungs off the first cattle gate. You can see me hunting for targets just to make sure I'm on the correct one. There's a specific order, so you had to, from the first position, near, second position, far. Then the third position, you had to shoot near, far. Fourth position, you had to shoot far, near. And the 5th position, you had to shoot near, far, near, far. So I wrote the target order down this time. That helps.
About damn time. You ready? Ready? Waters up.
The skills stage. So this was the other time stage of the match, so they combined your time from the Humvee and from this stage to get your total time to determine any tiebreakers. So a little bit different than your normal skill stage. It was your typical PRS barricade, but you had 5 positions, so you reused one of your positions after you used all 4, and you had 10 shots rather than 8. Much like the Humvee, though, I was not in it for time. I knew there were much faster guys here that were going to beat me on time, so I wanted every point I could get. So typically an 8-round PRS run for me is in the mid to low 40 seconds. This stage was closer to 50 seconds for my first 8 rounds.
Yes, sir. Alrighty, you're already loaded and made ready. So, shooter's ready.
The Machine Gunner Hustle is a great example of what happens when you don't get any feedback on your misses. You're left guessing in the wind. So, Mirage is cooking off pretty heavy right to left. Wind's finally, I think for the day, made up its mind, which is great because it's the last stage of the day. But it looks like the target indicators, the little cardboard number pieces, fallen down behind the pig. And so the misses, you can see the cardboard just flapped a little bit, but I didn't see that in the scope at the time. And these bullets are just going off through the cardboard and into the dirt, so you get no feedback whatsoever. So was really struggling to, like, okay, am I off left, am I off right? So I actually decided, okay, well maybe I'm going to take off a little wind. And I finally start hitting. I think almost all of my misses were off right, so I had a little too much wind put into it. Not sure why on that time I decided to come back further right, even though I had been hitting by hitting just left of the target hanger, but yep, no mistake. There we go. Missed off right again, just above his head. So, slow to learn.
Ready?
Alright, we're on to day 2. So wind is definitely calmer. Is going right to left, but much like day 1. Missed my first shot. Not the greatest start to the day. So this had 2 barricades. One was a rooftop where the central axis of the rooftop, or the ridge of the axis, was pointed at the targets. And I was trying to set up a bipod with the bag, and I could not get the bipod and the bag to work in my favor. Was really struggling, as you can tell. I'm not level. Try anyway. Miss high off the turkey. Really should have just decided to bag it instead of do a bipod and a bag. It is more stable with the bipod, but I was fighting it so much I was not paying attention. I wasn't watching it, and it put me off level. Second position was a rooftop of the ridges, parallel to the firing line, so it gave you a nice spot to just set a bag and could get more than stable enough. This time, try holding a little bit lower on the turkey, but still probably just ended up missing off right. Miss high off the coyote.
Ready.
Okay, the Hoppy's Tires is another tires stage. So there's a series of tires, little tractor tires and truck tires laid out at different angles, some laid flat. This one opted to just bag only. I learned my lesson on trying to do bipod and bag. I decided, nope, we're just gonna bag it. You can tell the shadows are pretty heavy from this side of the range, and so, man, if you miss off into the dirt, it is almost impossible to see. I'm pretty sure that one went off left. Wind was coming right to left. Stayed that way almost all day. But thankfully that one dumped off the left on the far circle was the only miss for the morning on this stage. Just tried to get as stable as I could. I think, honestly, I just got lucky with some of these. They was not the most stable. Tires I seem to struggle with, cannot get super stable on. Barnes Rocks is a series of limestone blocks, big, huge boulders. Had to take up 5 separate positions across the boulders. I actually enjoyed this stage because of this square target that's hidden behind the ridge. I always think it's kind of interesting when the MD plays with terrain that way and places targets in a way that makes you question whether or not you're going to be able to hit them, but the bullet's trajectory is going to put it well over the top of that berm. Get it on target. The stage was pretty straightforward, good solid positions, was able to make nice clean breaks. I think I only had that one drop, and that was simply just shooter error. That was a bad trigger press, but just shook it off and executed the rest of the run as good as I could. So this shoot house hustle is the other stage that I would love to have back. I've been trying to forget this stage since the moment it happened. This one was rough. Had a complex shooting order through 5 different windows. All the windows had to be different shapes. There was a lot of panning movement. And I rehearsed this in my head, I can't even tell you how many times. There were 3 or 4 shooters ahead of me, and I watched them run it. I had the order in my head. I was even calling impacts for those 3 shooters that were ahead of me to try and ingrain it into my head. And wouldn't you know it, I shoot it out of order. So these first few positions, doing okay. Seems for me when you've got a complex shooting order and I start missing, I stop thinking. And this is where the wheels come off the bus and you start to make some really just dumb mistakes. Couldn't really see whether I was off left or right. I think I was off right on that one. So that was a near far near. So to try to get to my next position, I'm still frustrated that I've dropped 2. Looking back on it, it's nothing to be frustrated about. And then shoot this completely out of order. This next position was supposed to be
That was an impact, right?
far near far. And realized as soon as I saw the impact and nobody called it, oh man, I'm in trouble. And now I'm flustered. I'm trying to play catch up. I can't find the target and out of time. And the bolt flick of disgust. All right, what better way to follow up a rough stage like that conex stage with machine guns? So had to pick the M4, the logical choice. So rifle was staged to the right of where we were shooting. Get behind the rifle, and now it's a troop line on out. You can see the Mirage cooking pretty heavily from right to left. I have my dope dialed in. You can hear me. Huh. Not sure why that. It was the exact same wind, exact same hold. Could have just been a flyer. I know there could have just been my average dispersion on the gun just rearing its ugly head. But yeah, not really sure what happened there. But the rest of these follow up relatively quick. So you'll see this last one, I start to hold less wind, and that's because we're panning far enough over that the wind angles actually come down some. So rather than adding more wind leading into it, I'm actually taking some out because now I'm starting to shoot into the wind. So it was my turn to be up first on the Zeiss Rockin' Railroad Ties. This one had a lot of movement, so you had 2 shots from 2 separate positions on a rock. And, ooh, I almost pressed that trigger on the wrong target to start with, but correct back to the right target. That one looked like a miss, but was actually just skipped off the right-hand edge, and they called it an impact. Really need to work on my recoil management, not free recoiling so much. I think I'd be able to see a lot more of what's actually happening on plate. So these next positions are 1 shot each from 6 different positions on railroad ties, so you really have to pay attention to time management and deciding how much you're actually going to watch the plate, how much time you're going to spend moving, making sure you have plenty of time to get to all those positions. Ended up having plenty of time. Target was good size, so you could run it pretty fast. Overall, I think the target sizes for this match were really good, really well thought out. Small when it needed to be challenging, but when you needed to run it fast, they were a little bit more forgiving.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
So I'll be honest, full credit for this stage goes to the rest of the squad. Since I was up first on stage 18,
Ready?
I was last on stage 19, and so I had the benefit of watching literally everybody else in the squad run this stage. And people had run the gamut and wind from, some of them dealt with full right to left, some had a right to left, but only far targets, and a left to right where the wind was curling down off these trees. I was lucky enough to only have the right to left during my run of it, and my wind corrections, my wind dope pretty much held solid the whole way out. There was a fair bit of panning from right to left on these targets, so you had to add more and more, even though the distances weren't dramatically changing. Great trace though. Really actually helped. Like, I don't usually watch trace a bunch, but when you can follow that in, and it gives you a really good indication of where you're hitting on the plate. So I'm adding a lot more wind here. Couldn't see where my miss was, and I decided, well, it's either going to add or take out. So I took out some of my wind. It was the right guess, and it was just that. It was a guess. But it told me which bracket I needed to run for this last targeted F5. So, squad 1, thanks guys. That's all you.
Outstanding. Woo! Shooter got for 9. I'll take that.
So since I was in squad 1, we
Ready?
started on stage 1. Even though it was a random draw, we still started on stage 1. So we were ending on stage 20. So this was a little bittersweet for me. I was definitely exhausted after 2 full days, but was kind of sad for this to be the last stage. Was a little nervous about this, having so much movement and having to dial back and forth, back and forth. I think ultimately I made the right call on the first few positions here, where you had to shoot these near and far in a row, troop line in a row, or sorry, TYL in a row, and dialed in between. And I just missed just off left. But then the next 2 positions, you had to shoot 2 targets near, 2 targets far, and I was afraid of wasting time, and so I decided to try and hold, and that was a bad call. My hold was not great. It was supposed to be 0.8 mil. I was holding more like 0.5, so on both of these instances, my second rounds fall short. And again, had plenty of time, should have taken the time to dial, and really hate to miss my last shot, but great match, a lot of fun.